Welcome back to the Word Podcast. I'm Julian Spivey, the editor, publisher, and head writer for The Word. I'm joined today by Tyler Glover, who is the go-to Taylor Swift fan that I always use when I need anything Swift-related for the website. Most recently, he reviewed Taylor's new album, Lover, for The Word webzine. You can find that in the music section of thewordwebzine.weebly.com. Thanks for joining me today, Tyler.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You were just telling me a little bit about how you became a big Taylor Swift fan, and like a lot of, are they called Swifties?
Yes.
Like a lot of Swifties. You didn't actually begin with her first album, so when did you kind of get into it?
It was around the time of Fearless coming out. I actually got into her. I remember the first time I heard her song was I had been going through a difficult time with, I actually was in love with this girl who didn't love me. And I actually had a day where, it kind of became a realization that this was how things were going to be. And I remember getting in my car that day and, turned on the radio to listen to music, and it was Teardrops on My Guitar was playing on the radio.
That's the perfect song for that scenario.
Yes, definitely. And it just, that spoke to me as, it definitely spoke to me. And then from then on, I just kind of followed her career from then on and just found out that a lot of the stories that she were telling from her life related to mine.
We've got a lot to unpack, especially because Taylor Swift's one of the biggest stars in the world and has been. She goes neck and neck with Beyonce and Lady Gaga as the biggest pop star. They're like the Mount Rushmore, 3 of the 4 Mount Rushmores. I'm not even sure who you would add as the 4th one because they're so much bigger than everybody else. But first I want to start with Lover, which, like I said, you recently reviewed for my site, and people can find it there. An excellent job, by the way. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
There's a couple of quotes from your review that I want to bring up. One is kind of your synopsis of Lover, and you said, Lover combines the 80s pop sound of 1989 and the strong lyricism of Red to make one of Swift's best albums to date. You want to add on that or kind of explain how she was able to combine sounds from a couple of her previous albums to make one of her best albums so far?
Yes, definitely. I will say, when you listen to Lover, you definitely feel like upon just listening to it, a lot of the songs are very symbolic and kind of reminiscent of 1989, feeling like they could almost be on 1989 in some ways, especially when you compare that with Reputation, which was so different, vastly different from the rest of it. So it definitely appears sound-wise that she had went back to 1989. But her lyrics were also just so much stronger. Red is considered to be one of the, one of her best ones. Like a lot of Swifties would say, Red is her best one. And those lyrics are just so strong on this one too. So I felt like it really was just a good combination. And in fact, I actually said when I reviewed it that Lover was probably my second best album of hers. Just 1989 was the one that I only felt was better. But actually, upon listening to it more, it's really kind of getting in there where, a few weeks later, I might be saying Lover's her best because it really does have something for everybody.
One of the great things about Taylor Swift, and I don't even pretend to be a fan, and that's just because I'm not really a fan of pop music in general. Nothing against Taylor Swift's music. But one of the things that does make her kind of an outlier in pop music, and one of the things that kind of allows me to have a higher level of respect for her as opposed to other pop stars, is she doesn't have a group of 14 people writing songs for her. She writes every one of her songs. Am I right?
Yes.
Every track pretty much on her albums is hers with a co-writer, sometimes just her alone. So that's really an admirable thing about her albums. One other thing you said in your review is you said, upon listening to this album, it appears that the reports of old Taylor Swift's demise were premature. And I know that's kind of a reference to, I forget the song. Which song was it that she said that Taylor can't come to the phone right now because she's dead?
Yeah, Look What You Made Me Do.
Look What You Made Me Do. That's right, from her previous album. So expand upon that and say why the old Taylor Swift's kind of back on Lover.
I will say the most apparent song on this album that makes you definitely feel like old Taylor is back is the Soon You'll Get Better song, because when you listen to that, it sounds like one that could have actually been on Fearless or one of her country albums, because she it's featuring the Dixie Chicks, and it's just the music, it sounds like in her sound is just very reminiscent of the old Taylor, and it's definitely getting back to her more sweet self than what she had, especially from this villain she was portraying with her Reputation era.
And for those who may not have heard the song, it's one of her most emotional and closest to her because it's about her mom's fight with, is it breast cancer it's some kind of cancer. It is some kind of
cancer, but I'm not sure.
And including the Dixie Chicks, kind of unfortunate for me is they weren't as big of a part of the song as I kind of hoped they would be. But it is nice that she kind of brought them back in a sort of country-ish song. I know they've sent that single out to country music. I don't know that a lot of people are playing it. That may have more to do with the Dixie Chicks on it because of some stupid controversy almost 20 years ago. But the thing that I liked about her putting the Dixie Chicks on that is that was her mom's favorite group.
Yes,
so that was part
definitely.
of this tribute to her mom. Do you have anything else you want to say about Lover before we go on to a few more questions that I have about Taylor Swift?
I will say that, something I touched on before is that I feel like this album has something for everyone. And I have to say, I listening to this album the other day to prepare for this, I was listening to her whole album again. And I just think that it really does have something for everyone. I mean, my daughters dance to this Me song all the time. It's got such a good beat, and it's such a powerful message about self-love, on this album about Lover, and normally you think of, a love interest, and it's so great to for a good positive message for my daughters to learn about self-love before, more importantly than finding a man, but it's also having just it has the most romantic song in my opinion that she's ever written, Lover, on it. But it also has, songs where, it's, her classic diss-off tracks, like I Forgot You Existed, which is one of the most cutthroat things to ever say to somebody.
She always has at least one of those on her records. She's kind of, in some ways, maybe more wrong than right, has been known as that kind of performer. And we'll get to a little bit of that in a bit, too. Do you have anything else to add about the record, though? Or does that pretty much wrap that portion up?
Yes, I think that.
I do want to get to one thing. I've kind of jumbled these notes and going out of order. We talked about how they sent the one with the Dixie Chicks to country radio. Do you think Taylor Swift's ever going to kind of go back and make her sort of country music, which was always pop country, but had more of a country flavor than what she's currently been doing the last few years? Or do you think that she's so comfortable with the pop world that she's just going to kind of stick to that for the time being, or maybe for the rest of her career?
I really feel like it may be situations like what happened on Lover pretty much for the rest of her career, where like she had this pop record with Lover, but also threw in Soon You'll Get Better, and it definitely felt still on brand for her, even though it wasn't pop with with the rest of it. But I definitely think that's kind of how she'll go probably the rest of her career.
I think a lot of people kind of feel that, but there's also some within country music who are like almost sometimes seem desperate to have her back, which I don't know if that's the right kind of attitude to have, but that just shows you how big she was for the medium and the genre of country music. The biggest story, maybe, other than her release of Lover this summer, was the selling of her masters from Big Machine Records to Scooter Braun. Scott Borchetta, who was the owner of Big Machine, Taylor's former record label, sold her masters and all of Big Machine Records stuff to Scooter Braun, who's kind of started out as Justin Bieber's agent and has gone to be this big, huge guy in pop music. And he and Swift have a little bit of bad blood in the past, and Swift was not happy at all about this deal, mostly because Borchetta of Big Machine reportedly didn't offer her a chance at purchasing her masters before selling the rest of the company to Scooter Braun. A lot of that has to do with the fact that her masters were a big part of this. What he could have gotten would not have been as big without those. And as sort of a workaround, Swift has said that she's actually going to re-record these songs, which is kind of a revolutionary idea. You don't see that happen a lot. So what are your thoughts around this story with Borchetta and Braun and Taylor Swift's masters?
Well, I actually think that it's a great thing that she's doing this. I think that one thing that has bothered me about this whole situation is that you get people that are like, oh, she's whining. She's just, she shouldn't be making a big deal about this. This is the way the business has been done for years. But, never in the history of the world has things changed because people just constantly went along with the way things have always been. And I think that's one thing that I've always been so admirable, that has been so admirable about Taylor Swift is, like when artists weren't getting paid with, I believe it was Spotify. Was it Spotify? Yes. She took her whole catalog off of Spotify
That's correct.
and wrote them a letter saying that, they would not have that. And, she would definitely help that business, but she took it off to make a statement. And yes, these things are helping her career, but they're also helping future artists. And that's something she brings up a lot, in which I think is so admirable of a quality, because yes, it's helping her, but she's definitely thinking of future and using her voice to be able to make change for the business. And it definitely will help future artists for sure in that regard.
Yeah, and it has kind of been the way that the record business has always gone for a long time there. The Beatles didn't own their masters, and that's how Michael Jackson ended up purchasing the Lennon and McCartney songbook. I feel like every artist should be the one to own their master recordings. Unfortunately, it's not how that goes. And Taylor Swift signed with Big Machine when she was 13 years old. So it's not one of those things that you can say, well, she should have known better. She was a child when she signed her first contract. So I am happy that she's going to go through this, even though it's kind of unusual, and re-record those. And I hope she can also one day, if she wants them, purchase the originals as well. Speaking of Taylor being important for the future of artists, she has such a big fan base that she can literally change opinions in the world. And many liberals actually derided Taylor for not being political during the last presidential election because of her influence. And now that she has recently actually gotten a little political, both in song and mostly, just with her words outside of her music, it's actually irritated some conservatives. So it's one of those, you can't have it the way you want it either way. Do you actually have an opinion on this? And do you believe that it's right or wrong for musicians or celebrities in general to share their political opinions and attempt to influence their fan base on such matters?
Well, I have to say, she did do an interview recently where she was asked about why she waited to do it. And one of the things that she said was that, at the time Hillary was being vilified, and at that time, if you remember, she was also being vilified. And I think that she just felt that her voice would not be somebody to help the process of getting Hillary elected. And I think that, even though that's something she really wanted, and she probably would have wanted to step out for it, I think that she just didn't feel like it was going to help, that she just wasn't the best person to step out and do it. So I definitely understand why she didn't want to, but I also understand why she wanted to now. And I have to say, one of the biggest things that irritates me is when you have people say, oh, shut up. Shut up and sing. And then also, even with the Meryl Streep situation, I'm bringing in Meryl Streep here,
That's perfectly fine.
With talking about how she should not be saying things like at the Golden Globes, when she put down Donald Trump, when she won the Cecil B. DeMille Award, I believe.
Yep.
And I've always said, that's their platform. And even though they are entertainers, they are Americans just the same.
That's right.
And, we go on Facebook, we post what we want to post, we let our feelings be known, and they have that platform. If we have that platform, we can choose, they can choose, and they should be able to choose to whether they want to use their voice that way. And in my opinion, it should not affect how you see that artist. I mean, okay, so you don't support LGBTQ, the LGBTQ community. Okay, well, skip that song when you're listening to your Lover album. It doesn't change anything from listening to that whole album. It does not change how great of an album it is. If that's just something you don't believe it, and that's your prerogative. And she even says in the song, I ain't trying to mess with your self-expression, but I've learned a lesson that stressing and obsessing about somebody else is no fun. So she's even saying herself that.
As Taylor Swift is your favorite. My favorite has been in similar situations. Bruce Springsteen. He speaks his mind, often politically, performed at rallies for Barack Obama. And this is a thing I agree with you on, I've never understood why people don't want celebrities to speak their opinion. I get that they have bigger fan bases, but when I speak my opinion, it may only be to 100 people on Facebook, but just because they have a large fan base doesn't mean that they should have to shut up and sing. If I'm going to, spout my beliefs while I'm doing, and I'm not a politician, I don't understand why people have an issue with them. So I think it's good that she's speaking up. But I also think, like what I started saying was the liberals were deriding her for not giving her opinion. it's also none of our business if a musician or celebrity doesn't want to share what they believe politically. It's their
definitely.
it's a personal thing. They should do what they please with it. If she wanted to wait 2 years before she did it, that's only up to her. I mean, really, we should just let her be who she is. One thing that we briefly touched on earlier is a lot of people have kind of grown tired over the years of Taylor Swift, as they say, playing the victim in her relationships and her career, etc. One of the songs that I know you like on the Lover album is called "The Man," and she talks about how she would be treated differently if she were a man instead of a woman. It's kind of like Beyonce's "If I Were a Boy" a few years ago, where just we treat men and women, especially when it comes to not just celebrities, but in general in this country, differently. So, what are your thoughts on her always coming off as the victim and how people kind of treat her for that?
Yeah, I mean, like, it just, looking at even her dating, life, like, when you look back at who she's dated, probably over the course of her career that she's been in the public, she's probably dated 8 or 9 people.
And most of them happen to be famous, and
yes.
Because of that, we follow it more than, if one of our friends had dated 8 or 9 people, it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yes. And even in reference, to, like, the Man song, it's always almost glorified, or at least has been in the past, when a man had, like, 6 women on his arm, 3 on each one, and people were like, oh, he is the man, he's, look at all these women he has, and it's kind of like that was the story there. And, I think it has just been so unfair because she is a woman. She actually was just dating one at a time. And, when you're dating, you're trying to find the one. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I'm sure it's a lot more hard for them to find somebody because of all their, she's literally done record, promotion, tour, go back to the studio, and rinse and repeat for the last, like, 4.
Work. And a lot of the famous people she's been with, actors, other musicians, they're doing constant work too. So they're probably only, being able to see each other a short amount of time. And that cannot be good for a relationship.
Oh, definitely not.
You want to talk any about Kanye and Kim Kardashian? I don't even have it on my notes, but there's kind of been this kind of battle between Kanye West and Taylor Swift for more than a decade now, which started at the MTV VMAs, like I said, over a decade. Did you want to bring that up, or should we just skip that?
Oh, my goodness, definitely. Because let me tell you, there's been something I've wanted to say about this for years, because it's drove me so crazy that they thought they had proof with this phone call that Kim put out there. Because, when she won the Grammy for Album of the Year for 1989, becoming the first woman to do it twice on an album that was hers. Mm-hmm. And, when she basically
just winning 2 Album of the Years in general is a rare feat,
yes,
too.
Definitely. And when she won, she basically let people know that the line she had the problem with was that Kanye said, "I made that be famous," and and when you listen to that tape, with the recorded phone call, the Kanye only mentions the line of his famous song that says, "I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex." And yes, you can clearly see in that video that that she understands that that's going to be a lyric. And while that may be offensive to some of us, apparently it wasn't to her, but it's also not what she claimed to have the problem with. And there is no audio footage of that being out there because it doesn't exist. And I think that that's one of the reasons I had such an issue with so many people taking offense to her and, like, acting like she was playing the victim in this situation, because she really did not know that that was a part of the line. There is no proof that she did know about that line. And so, for her to be called a snake by Kim Kardashian, which ended up working out great for her, because she ended up using that as, the star of her Reputation tour, which is, from what I've read, the highest grossing U.S. tour on record. So it definitely worked out for her in the long run.
Do you think that that's kind of done between her and Kanye, or do you think it's something that's going to pop up every couple of years or so?
I really don't know. I know that in her song "I Forgot You Existed," that I brought up earlier, she does mention I'm in my feelings more than Drake, and I know that if I believe correctly, Kanye and Drake had some. Or was it Kanye and Drake that had some blood? I don't know.
Who hasn't had blood?
Yeah, I know. So bad blood. So it almost kind of made me feel like, in a way, that was geared towards him, in a way that she forgot that he existed. So I'm hoping that story's over.
Okay, I want to play a little quick game. We're going to get into your favorite Taylor Swift songs in a second, but I want to do a little quick game where I'm going to throw out the motion, and I want you just off the top of your head to give me your go-to Taylor Swift song when you're feeling these feelings. So
Okay.
when you're happy, what is your go-to Taylor Swift song?
When I'm happy, probably Blank Space, because it's my favorite song of hers.
What about what song of Taylor Swift do you listen to when you're angry the most?
Oh, look what you made me do.
And how about if you're sad or just not feeling it?
Sad. Well, lately, soon you'll get better. But I also White Horse has been one that I listen to a lot.
Do you have any others any other songs that you listen to when you're feeling a certain way? Those are really the only three feelings I had. But if you want to add anything else,
When I don't really know how to feel, I listen to All Too Well, which is one of my second favorite of hers. But it just something about it. Just when I'm not sure how to feel, I feel like in that moment when she's saying all too well, that when she's looking back on those feelings, she said, "I just remember it all too well." I think that's the reason I go to that one, because I'm like, well, I feel like she didn't know how to feel when she was writing that song, and I feel like it's kind of reminiscent to me.
in September of 2018, so just this month last year, you did a list of your 20 favorite Taylor Swift songs for the Word. And again, you can go back to the archives of September of last year at the Word, webzine.weebly.com. Go to the music section, and you can find Tyler's article. I've taken the top 10 from that list, and I want you just to kind of give me a sentence or two about why you love these songs. And then when we get through the top 10, I want you to think of if there are any tracks from Lover that you would actually put into the top 10 now and what you would knock out because of that. So number 10 on your list was Innocent. What do you have to say about that?
With Innocent, I just love it because I actually had a situation happen to me years ago where when I was believed to have done something that I did not do. And when I listen to this song, it just makes me think back to, at this time this was kind of her song to Kanye, kind of in forgiveness of him. And, she says, "You're still innocent." It just, when I listen to that song, that's what I think of, about how I know in that moment I was innocent. And it feels good to know, that almost forgiveness aspect of it makes it definitely one of my top 10.
And number 9 on your list is one we talked about at the beginning of the show. That's Teardrops on My Guitar. Do you have anything you want to add other than what you said at the beginning of the show?
No, I think I touched on that one pretty good. Yeah.
Number 8 on the list is Fearless.
Fearless is just the song that I just want to play when it's raining outside and dance with my daughters. Like, I just want to be, I'm fearless. Every time I hear that song, that's what I want to do.
And number 7 on the list is Ours.
Ours has one of my probably favorite lyrics in it, where it says, "Don't you worry, your pretty little mind. People throw rocks at things that shine," which is so, for somebody, that struggles with, self-confidence. It's just such an amazing song to listen to, that people do throw rocks and, they have problems with people that do know about themselves. And it's definitely just a good song to make you feel good about that.
Number 6 on your list is the song that kind of kick-started her foray into pop music, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together.
Yes, I love this song. I remember it was also her first Billboard #1.
Oh, really?
And, I remember watching that video a million times. I always thought it was incredible that they did it in one take. They actually kept doing, and it was just, going around this whole little cardboard-like environment. I always thought it was the coolest thing, and it was definitely a song that I wish would have been out when I had my exes,
It is one of the quintessential breakup songs of the last decade. Number 5 on the list is Shake It Off, one of her most popular songs, I would think.
Yes, Shake It Off. And I have to say something funny about this, because I remember Shake It Off just being, the song that I go to when, I'm just trying to forget about everything, trying to, just dance it off the horrible things. But it's kind of funny because when I'm wanting to forgive my enemies and kind of move on, this is the song to listen to. And when I want to think about how angry I am at my enemies, I listen to Look What You Made Me Do. So it's kind of like I just choose which emotion I'm dealing with for the day.
We've got a few of her earlier songs on the next part of your list. Number 4, you have You Belong With Me.
Yes, You Belong With Me. And I have to tell you, this song is very special to me because when I proposed to my wife, I actually sang this song to her. And at the end of it, I changed the lyric to, have you ever thought just maybe you belong with me? And then I pulled out the wedding ring and it said, so will you marry me? And when I sang it, so every time I hear this song, I think of my proposal to my wife. So it's definitely, definitely one that touches me a lot.
So we actually have similar engagement stories then.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure if the listeners will care, but I'm going to bring it up. Did you do yours in person or on video?
It was in person, but
Okay,
I wish I would have done it on
well,
video.
I was
honestly.
I was too nervous to do it in person. So my song with my now wife has always been "When You Say Nothing at All," Keith Whitley song
great
that Alison
song.
Krauss redid. Ronan Farrow, Ronan Farrow's the journalist. I can't forget the guy's name, but the other guy from Ireland did it too, and. So I recorded the video of me singing it, and then I asked her in the video because I was too nervous. Yeah, you have more confidence apparently than I did. but it's interesting because I've never heard anybody except until now that's had that kind of moment. So I can understand why that's important to you. Number 3 is Love Story.
Yes. So you know, we had that same situation where I thought my wife's dad just completely hated me. So the Romeo and Juliet thing kind of played into that. And I remember also, you know, for sentimental reasons, this is definitely one of my favorite because when they announced us as Mr. and Mrs. Glover at our wedding, this was the song that played.
Oh, yeah.
So it was also one of those that's very, but it's also one of her biggest hits, honestly. I mean, it's one of, when people think of Taylor Swift, there's a lot of people that kind of quit following her career that this is the song they will say, you know, oh, I love Love Story, you know.
Number 2 on your list you briefly brought up a bit ago is All Too Well.
Definitely. And actually when there was a magazine recently that did a top, ranked all of her songs, and this was actually their number 1. And I actually think it's one, if you have not heard this song, I believe that everyone that has ever loved Taylor Swift should listen to this song. It's one of the most amazing songs ever. She actually had, this song was actually so, such a long song that they actually had to cut it before, and it's actually still like a 5-minute, almost 6-minute song, but there was actually a 10-minute version of this recorded at one point, and they kept cutting it down.
For both pop and country music, that is like almost unheard of.
Yes, and I will say something very exciting I've seen Taylor, that fans have been trying to suggest for Taylor when she re-records her masters, is that they're really they're throwing out ideas to her, and one of their ideas for her was to release that 10 minutes versions, which so many of us, including me, would be, especially Swifties, would be very excited to hear.
I know she's very loyal to her fan base because they're equally as loyal to her, so I'm sure at some point y'all might get a chance to hear that full version.
Definitely.
And number 1 on your list, you mentioned earlier that was your favorite, is Blank Space.
Yes, Blank Space is probably my favorite. And the reason for this is I feel like it sums up Taylor Swift just in a nutshell, because I feel like, you know, she, in this song, she really makes fun of herself and plays this character, you know, where she's like, oh, I just collect men, you know, and I feel like, you know, she's poking fun at it, like, oh yes, I just go from one to another, you know, and like one of my favorite lyrics is probably my favorite lyric is from this song where she says, darling, I'm a nightmare dressed like a daydream, because it's just, you know, it's so playful and so fun, and it's not supposed to be taken very seriously because she's definitely not this person. And the music video is even more hilarious because she's like beating up this nice car with this, you know, bat. I mean, it's just insanity. She's like stabbing a cake and like putting a knife through a picture. I mean, it's just insanity. And it's like, she's like, but this is who you say I am. So, you know, this is me embracing who you say I am.
She goes a little Carrie Underwood or Miranda Lambert on that, it sounds like.
Yes, definitely.
I gotta say, I've never, as I mentioned, I've never really been a big fan, because I don't really follow pop music that much. I will say she writes some of the best pop songs by far, even though I'm not really into that. And I never really liked her when she was on country radio, because as a country fan, I've never really liked many pop influences in it. But I will say that my favorite Taylor Swift song did not make your top 10.
Oh, really?
And I do want to hear your opinion on it. My favorite Taylor Swift song has always been, or at least since it was released, Back to December. Do you have anything you can add about that?
Definitely. Back to December. Yes. Back to December would probably be actually in my top like 25 for sure. If it didn't make my top 20, because,
It may have, but I just cut your top 10.
It definitely would be there because, in fact, this was the first song. I remember a lot of people reporting at the time that this was the first song they really felt like she was taking blame for the end of a relationship, and it was kind of a refreshing song, but in that
Very
regard,
honest.
yes, it just felt. You just felt her emotion, and she was actually saying, hey, I'm definitely not perfect all the time. This was me making a mistake. I wish I could have made this work. In fact, she actually, at one of her concerts, she would do a mashup with this song, and she would play It's Too Late to Apologize after, and then go back to her You're Not Sorry song. And I felt like that was her way of kind of giving us a window into what happened in real life, kind of like, she tried to go back to him, and he really didn't want her, back. He really felt like that. So I kind of felt like it was a nice little way she did that, because I felt like, in a way, for Taylor, because since she never really comments on things, I feel like this was her perfect way of kind of giving us the end to that story. Which I have to say, I know in my top 20, Dear John is one of these songs, and I just find it hilarious because, it's rumored to be about John Mayer, so it's definitely the most direct, and it has some of the most, one of the most gut-wrenching lyrics, and I definitely could understand why somebody like that would be really upset, for those lyrics to be said, but it's also definitely one of her best songs. So
I will also add real quick, and I don't know the full title, I've forgotten it, but the New Year's song she did on her album before Lover, I believe, I was really a fan of too. I thought that was really well written.
Yes,
what's the name of it?
A New Year's Day, and it was from Reputation.
Yeah, I really thought that was just a really well written and performed pop song. Before we get to any tracks from Lover that you might want to add in your top 10, you've talked about some of your favorite lyrics in these songs. Do you have an overall favorite Taylor Swift lyric from her entire body of work?
I think that one of the ones that's really stuck with me, being somebody that's been married and, also gone through a lot of relationships, and, when you go through life, you just deal with all these struggles. And I think the one that stuck with me the most is from Love Story, where she says, "This love is difficult, but it's real." And I think, you think about all the things you go through in life, and about how, yes, life, it's life is so difficult. You get so crazy. You get in your emotions so much. You yell. You say things you don't mean. But at the end, what we have is real.
All right. Would you kick any of these top 10 songs off of your list for anything from Lover?
I have to say that Lover has so many amazing songs, but I feel like the top 10 really just... the top 10 of anything really just defines who that person is, or what, like if we were doing this about movies, what movies are. So I feel like it would be hard to knock a lot of them off.
Songs are stuff that you have to live with.
Yes, definitely.
And the album came out a month ago, maybe a little over a month ago. So it would not surprise me if you find a year, 2 years, 5 years from now, if you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to redo this list and this is going to be on my list, but it's not something you want to add quite yet because it's still new for you and you're still familiarizing yourself with it.
Yes.
So you're going to stick with your top 10 for now?
I will say that one, because I say this because I feel like there may possibly in the future be more, but there is one I would knock off. I think that Innocent would be taken off at number 10, and I think number 10 would be this song called Cornelia Street.
Oh, yeah.
And from Lover, and I have to say, this song just really represents what I think Taylor does so amazingly. And one of the reasons I feel like is one of the main reasons she's as successful as she is because this song, Cornelia Street, is about, going through this love story, going through this event, but talking about how if it ever ended, you could never walk down that street again because you would be reminded too much of how great this was and how much this is. And what I think she does so great in this is that this is definitely all about her. And, she has so many details that are so specific to her life, but you listen to that song and you feel like it's so universal at the same time. And I feel like that's just where she excels, because you definitely hear this music, it's hers. She has her stamp and her footprint on it, but at the same time you can listen to that and feel like you're being taken back to an event in your life as well. And I mean, I think all good art, that's a good quality of all good artists. But I think that's just one thing that she does amazingly. I know that's the reason she's my favorite.
All right. I'd like to thank once again Tyler Glover for joining us on the Word podcast today. Once again, you can read all of his stuff on the Word webzine.weebly.com. Not only has he written about Taylor Swift extensively for us, he's also done some other writing, and I'm bugging him. I'm going to bug him some more to continue writing. I think he's going to help out with a collaborative article about the best TV shows of the decade for me. And you can check us out on social media at the Word Webzine on both Twitter and Facebook. Do you have anything you want to say before we head out?
No, but thank you so much
You
for
bet.
having me.
Hope to do it again. Thank you.
Thank you.